Today is episode 3 with Dr. B.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, ADDers, I'm so glad that you could join me today for my third podcast episode on Launch Day. You know, I have a special surprise for you as part of my celebration, but more on that in a bit. So today's episode is going to be all about getting past the fairy tales and the misinformation to the real challenges and the real solutions of life with an ADHD partner. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. For those of you living with adult ADHD, you know that it's so much more than being forgetful or late or procrastinating or hyperfocusing. It's living with a brain that's wired, activated, and motivated differently than the non-ADHD brains of the world. Your brain and your neurology are amazing. And before you can truly appreciate that, you need to understand more about what you've got. The journey of living well with adult ADHD is one of individuality and self-discovery, and learning what activates, motivates, and lights you up, drives you, so that you can quiet the challenges and be the full expression of you and your gifts. And for those of you who are living with an adult with ADHD, there is a lot for you to learn and to come to understand as well. You know, the typical reasons or meanings that you might be applying to your loved one's behaviors or lack of follow-through, it's all that you know right now. And most likely it's going to need some modifications. And I'm not talking about excuses or justifications here, just a different point of view that I want to offer you. Once upon a time, there was an ADHD couple that didn't know that's who they were. And so they expected to automatically live happily ever after, to have their challenges magically disappear, whether these were debt, unemployment, underperforming, resentments. They expected to know how to solve day-to-day problems through negotiation and accountability, and they both assumed that they were developmentally whole and complete. Instead, this couple lived Groundhog Day every single day. The same challenges, outcomes, disappointments, and the same lack of meaningful changes. They had no explanation for how or why life was the way that it was, and they had no role models for what could be done to make it so much better. Whether you've been together for years or you're relatively new to each other, I am so glad that you're listening today. If one or both of you do have ADHD, it's a part of your union. It's a part of your coupleship. And the sooner that you begin to factor it in, the sooner that things can improve. If you've been together for years and you feel that your relationship is beyond help, think again. You know, without the right meanings and great tools, you've been set up for failure from the beginning. That's not fair, for sure, because all the pain and the hurt that you've both been experiencing, there's really something that you can do about it now to turn things around. And just a last time reminder, every episode will have no more than 3 important points, relevant stories, an action step for you, a favorite quote of mine, and starting in May, I'm going to be bringing guests to share their expertise with you, along with my own. So I trust that you'll keep coming back to find the value and the answers in our time together. I'm excited. I'm really excited, and I hope that you are too. In this episode, I want to help you get beyond Cinderella, past the fairy tales and the misinformation, to the real challenges and the real solutions for living and loving with an ADHD partner. Today I'll be sharing why all those broken promises don't mean that they don't care, and why unilateral decisions threaten your union and create resistance, whether it's a union with yourself or with the other person, and how to weave ADHD into your union or coupleship rather than it being an intruder or an annoying irritant. But first, I want to quickly tell you about the gift that I'm giving you today. Since I've already talked about it in the first 2 episodes, I love to celebrate a lot, all the wins of life. So not only am I celebrating the launch of my podcast show with the release of 3 episodes today, which is huge for me, I'm also celebrating my birthday, which was just a few days ago. I generally celebrate my birthdays for at least a week, and actually celebrated my 60th birthday for an entire year, where I had special gifts that I gave to myself every month. You know, I love getting older because my life just keeps getting better and better. So it was my birthday, and I'm giving you a gift. The gift of seeing the events of your life through a different lens and celebrating them all. It's changed my life, and it can change yours too, by learning to put different, more positive meanings to your life events. So I want you to slow down your mind. That's right. If you're in a place where you can do this, just maybe take a deep, relaxing breath and just pause. And take a moment to think of what happened that you just let pass by without any acknowledgement or praise. Did you get derailed, yet you were able to get back on track and complete that task? Did you want to hit the snooze button and sleep a bit longer, but you decided not to? Did you keep your word to yourself about something small that made you feel good about yourself? Or perhaps you reached out to a friend for comfort when you typically keep to yourself in difficult times. All of those things are wins in my book and deserve to be acknowledged and celebrated. So if you're game, do it now. Give yourself a little pat on the back and a little bit of praise. Why? Because if you don't or you won't celebrate the things that you need to do or the smaller wins of the day-to-day living stuff, how are you ever going to stay motivated or even get motivated to do these things? You know, I found that it was very difficult before I started celebrating these wins. And think about it. If you only celebrate when the big stuff happens, you could be waiting for a really, really long time in between celebrations. And that would be really sad because life's for celebrating every single day. At least that's how I'm living my life now. There's at least one thing every day that happens to me, to you, that's a win. And you can learn to see it that way and begin to celebrate too. A while back, I created a mini course called The Magical Power of Wins. I think my hair was short and curly back then. You know, the course is based on the practice of sharing and celebrating wins at the beginning of each weekly meetup group that I facilitated since 2013. And the cumulative effect of that practice has been absolutely amazing. And I want you to have a taste of that. I do. The course normally sells for $27. However, it's my gift to you today. As one of my very first listeners, it's my thank you to you for showing up today to listen to my first, second, and or my third podcast and leaving a thoughtful review or comment, because I really appreciate that you're going to do that. I want to be my very best for you, and your feedback means the world to me, and it's going to help me to become my best for you. So after you post your review on iTunes, take a quick screenshot of it, head over to my website for a copy of today's show notes, and get your free gift. Thanks so much for celebrating my podcast launch and my birthday with me today.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, great free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to Beyond Cinderella, living and loving with an ADHD partner and what that's all about. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why you might be struggling in your relationship. And I'm going to share 3 stories with you today, as well as talk about your responsibility in this. That's right, your responsibility or your ability to respond to the situation, because you're not off the hook here. I hope at least one of these stories is going to resonate with you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. There are the promises that we break to ourselves, and there are those that we break to others. Both are equally serious. The ones that you break to yourself, those are teaching you not to trust yourself or to trust your word to yourself. And you know, you need to be able to trust yourself and trust your word and believe that what you tell yourself is what's going to happen, or there's going to be serious consequences when something needs to be done and you can't get yourself to do it because yourself blocks you. The ones that you break to others are also serious because they break down trust and respect. So why are there so many broken promises, and why does it mean that they don't care? Let me continue. Jack always had good intentions and he meant well. He was a good guy. He wanted to be helpful, he wanted to give to others, yet his follow-through was sadly lacking. He would give his word, he would make a promise, and that promise was empty. And most of the people who knew Jack, they knew that they were used to his forgetfulness and his lack of follow-through. That didn't mean that they felt any better for knowing that this is how Jack was. They just knew this is how he was. Jack had no tracking system for what came out of his mouth. In the moment, he would make a commitment or an appointment, and in the next moment, he wouldn't even remember that he did it. How could this be? It's as if he expected that the information would somehow magically be stored and that he would be cued and reminded when the time came. And this wasn't the case. Jack's memory wasn't functioning very effectively, and he wasn't aware enough to even know that he needed to compensate in some way for its shortcomings. Because of its lack of converting short-term memories into long-term memories, it was a huge problem. So most all of the promises or the commitments that he made, they never happened, and he never even remembered until after the fact, when somebody was really upset with him. He felt terrible every time this happened, and yet he didn't know what to do, and no one ever made suggestions that were really helpful to him. Jack knew in his heart what he said in the moment is what he meant. He was in his integrity, and he intended to do this, but his mind wasn't cooperating with him. He was really frustrated, and he didn't know why. You know, if we just take Jack's actions at face value and we judge them, we might think that he had no integrity. He's not a man of his word, just doesn't seem to care what it is that he promises to others or even to himself, because everything he says means nothing. If we were going to go with that interpretation or judgment, we would really be doing Jack a disservice. A better approach might be to be curious as to why Jack says one thing and he does another. What causes someone to behave this way? What I'm talking about is to seek to understand the other person first before seeking to be understood by them. If we just keep after Jack and criticizing him for being so forgetful and hurtful and uncaring and pile all that negativity on him, what are we looking to get back in return? Do you really think that Jack will all of a sudden come to his senses and snap out of it and become responsible and accountable or whatever else we feel that he's missing because we keep after him? If that's what you think, you're wrong. I would be wrong, because that approach and that assumption about Jack is wrong. Jack cares very deeply for the people in his life and for what he says he's going to do. The problem is with Jack's recall and his memory, not with his intention. This is not a moral issue. When we can be gracious enough to separate out intention from actions and explore what's happening, we can get a very different picture. We can see and hear the shame, the embarrassment that Jack lives with every single day. We can hear how disappointed he is in himself and confused by his lack of memory and his lack of actions. And if we stay with this path, we might even get to a feeling of compassion for Jack and wonder and ask what it is that we might figure out together to keep these things from happening and keep these hurts from piling up. Two people working together, free of judgment, can work miracles. Fast forward to how things are working out for Jack. With teamwork and compassion, solutions and strategies, these things being developed, that resolved the fallout in Jack's life due to his memory challenges. A few background facts. Most of us assume that every adult is developmentally whole and complete by the time that they reach adulthood. By that I mean all parts of that person are working correctly. Experience has taught me that many, many adults are not fully developed, and they lack basic skills that are causing problems in multiple areas of their lives. Years ago, I fell in love with the work of Virginia Satir, especially her parts parties and work with aspects of ourself. I came to see myself and others as many different aspects of self, all living in one body, kind of like being in a timeshare. And so if one aspect or one part of this inner community makes a decision and it doesn't consult the others before expecting it's okay with everyone, it can create a serious problem and create a logjam. Unilateral decisions threaten the union. They create resistance, whether that union is with yourself or somebody else. These kind of decisions just don't consider the needs of anyone else other than themselves. So here's a little skit, a cute little skit that I've played out with myself in the past. It goes like this. I'm the captain of my ship, and I'm in charge of all the parts from my perspective, that is, and I get to decide for all of us. But there's 2 or 3 parts that don't agree with this arrangement, and since all parts share my body, all part gets a vote. Remember, this is a timeshare. So when I've been in a very controlling mode in how I run my internal ship, I have told parts of me, your time's coming. I just have to do this and I have to do this, and then you're going to get your time. Probably this weekend or later tonight or whenever I can fit the time in. And after a while, those parts of me are really unhappy with me and how I'm running things. They find ways to stir things up and they cause problems for me. And it's like they're saying to me, you promised me that I'd get my turn, my time, and that was months ago. And I see you giving time to everyone else and everything else that you want to, but not to me. I have had it with being pushed to the side, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Things are going to come to a screeching halt as of right now. I've learned that those parts that weren't consulted resist because it's not okay, it's not good for them, and they're going to sabotage my efforts. And I can push and try, but I'm not going to make any progress. In fact, the more I do this, it gets more shut down, more overwhelmed, because I'm trying to force a part of me to accept a decision that they're not okay with, and it's not good for them. And I haven't been very considerate to consult them and ask them what the problem is for them so that I could solve it and I could make it a win-win situation for everyone or every part concerned. And the same thing is true in a relationship or a union with somebody else outside of me. I assume that what I've considered works for them and is good for them. I haven't consulted them to make sure that this is true. And then time and time again, I make these unilateral decisions and just tell them, this is what's going to happen, as if they're the child and I'm ordering them around. A few background facts. The success of your relationship with yourself or with another person depends on open communication, where you first seek to understand the other person or the other part before you push to get them to understand your point of view and your desires. The success of relationships, whether it's with yourself or others, needs to consider the needs of all parts, everyone who's affected before a decision is made, striving to meet the needs of everyone or every part that's being affected. And whether it seems like there's no way to meet the needs of everyone that's affected, there's this technique called chunking up to a higher level of thought to determine what is the feeling, not just the thing, but what is the feeling that all parts or all people are seeking, rather than just the literal outcome. And you might find that all of the parts or all of the people are seeking the same feeling, just taking different roads to get to it. Learning that you can make a resolution much easier by finding something that meets the feeling needs of all parts or all people, even if it's not anything like the original request, is a win for everyone. When Georgia and Sam said, "I do," they knew that Sam had ADHD, but they didn't really know what that meant to their union. They didn't know that they were going to have to consider the needs of ADHD in all of their decisions and all of their conversations, just like it was another person or another part. So here's the journey that they took and how they wove ADHD into their union rather than allowing it to be an annoying intruder or irritant. Rather than assuming anything, Georgia and Sam decided to be thorough. They created a game of 20 questions where they interviewed each other to learn about how they were the same, how they were different, and what they each needed. Their attitudes were open and they were free of judgment, which was great. Just exploration and information gathering rather than snide remarks of how something seems stupid or unnecessary. They explored their needs for sleep, for downtime, for alone time, and other needs to learn as much as possible about each other. And it was a fun game that they created and not something that couples commonly do, whether they have ADHD or not. They had both done a lot of reading and research about ADHD to understand the needs of ADHD, since it was a partner within their relationship. So they were asking, what does Sam need? What does Georgia need? And what does ADHD need? What a great conversation to have. A big lesson Georgia learned is that for now, Sam just couldn't seem to get going on tasks without a gentle reminder from her. It's important that a reminder is not parental or nagging in any nature, just simply, it's supper time. Please set the table now. It would help me a lot. Thank you. Sometimes it was necessary for Georgia to gently put her hand on Sam's shoulder when she was speaking to him because he was so deeply involved in what he was doing that he literally wasn't hearing her voice without that physical contact. She knew this wasn't going to be forever. It was just a stopgap to avoid hurt feelings or resentments from building up while they worked on a more permanent solution and strategies. A big lesson that Sam learned is that when he promised to do something and it wasn't done when he said it would be done, Georgia got upset, even if he finished up the task by the end of that day. He learned that it was very important to Georgia that what he said is what he did, because then she could plan her own time and her own life and not be derailed by Sam. It never occurred to Sam that not producing results when he said he would impacted the other person the way that he came to understand it did. This was a huge eye-opener for Sam. Georgia and Sam and ADHD went on to create a wonderful life together, where the needs of all three of them were considered and met. What a novel concept. Some background facts. No two adults with ADHD are the same, nor do they have the same challenges or gifts. Doing the legwork early on to learn what your uniqueness is saves lots of time, hurts, and disappointments. Remember to explore the needs of each person as well as the needs of ADHD, as expressed through the person who has it. So here's your action step. It's your responsibility to get the information and training that you need. In other words, your ability to respond to your needs, your spouse's or your partner's needs, and the needs of ADHD within the union. With an open and a willing mind and heart, you need to seek to understand the needs of yourself, the other, and ADHD. Only after you understand the needs of all three, then and only then, seek to meet the needs of all three for a win-win-win situation. For focus, identify what the strengths and the weaknesses are for each with focus so that you don't misinterpret what's happening. On follow-through, identify the strengths and the potholes for each of you so you can create strategies in advance so that you avoid being derailed as much as possible. And with self-management, what areas of life do you each manage really, really well? And which are the worst and which are the best? And how can you complement each other for the best outcomes while considering ADHD too? Alexander Graham Bell said, "When one door closes, another door opens. But we often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we don't see the ones which open for us." The question I have for you at this point in our journey together is, what doors are you clinging to? And what doors are you not seeing that have opened for you? And are you ready to shift your point of view? I really appreciate you showing up to listen today and in the future. New episodes are going to be available once a week on Mondays at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to be talking about such compelling topics as perfectionism, analysis paralysis, procrastination, managing yourself within time, and more hot topics, as well as lining up guests to bring more great insights to you. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and keep coming back. In fact, if you receive value today, please leave a comment or a review on iTunes so that I know that I'm meeting your needs. This really means a lot to me to know that your life is getting better a little bit at a time, each and every time that we get together. And then make sure to get over to my website to get your show notes and claim your free gift. That's it for today.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.